Hi, my name is Tom Wilgum. Welcome to the ASUG News Studio, which is sponsored by NCT Data. We are here broadcasting live from SAP TechEd and Decode. And I'm really delighted to have Jonathan Becher, the Chief Marketing Officer for SAP, in the studio. I think this is a first for you, and we're really happy to have you here, Jonathan.
Thanks for having me on the show.
We shared dinner last night, which was very nice. Thank you very much for having.
My pleasure.
I actually peppered you with a few questions last night that I was hoping to get today. Very exciting week for SAP, for you, for your team, debuting the Run Simple campaign. Talk to us about the rationale. What does a customer really need to know about this campaign, and how should they kind of look at it and think about it in terms of their future as well?
Fair enough, and we should start with the individual.
Sure.
We all know that our lives are getting more complex, whether it's more mobile devices, more sources of information, from social media, non-traditional things. But if you go into the workplace, what we've discovered is complicated things. Complexity is the number one thing that's keeping businesses back. In fact, it's estimated that roughly 10% of companies' profitability are lost because things are more complicated than they need to be. So what is complicated? It really boils down to three things, which is making decisions is getting harder and harder because people get access to information, but by the time they get the information, it's already changed again, and they don't know if the decision they're making is on the latest information or not. The second thing that gets more complicated, not just making decisions, but running their business processes, because what's happened the last decade is the best of breeds have grown up, and the processes that exist don't really connect to each other very well, and so there's all this overhead of moving data and information around to try to optimize your processes that doesn't really work very well. And the third thing is the technology itself. Unless you've got a PhD in technology, it's hard to keep track of all these things. And how do you focus on optimizing your business and not, as most IT budgets, 2/3 of it going to overhead, just running what you ought to have. So we want to simplify all that. Decision making, processes, and technology.
You know, I wish I often had a PhD in technology. I think I could really do well with that.
No, you don't, do you?
Not really.
Okay.
So, so you're saying, in a sense, you're feeling the customer's pain, to borrow a cliche from a while ago, right?
That's
and this
exactly
is
right.
the response to that.
Let's make it easier for the customer, even if it makes it harder for SAP.
Does it make it harder for SAP?
It does, because it's really hard to make things simple. And so what that means is, in the past when you got software, you had to install the software and configure the software and optimize the software and update the software. And it's true, if you look at the price of actually going live, the software itself was probably a relatively small fraction of that. But when you go to a model that's more about renting software or subscription, or everyone likes to call that SaaS or cloud, then all that is bundled together, and you want to be able to get up and running quite quickly. And so as you consume, as people say, it's very much the eating metaphor, then you want to get value as soon as possible. And that makes it harder for the vendor, but better for the customer.
Did you test this on customers? How does something like this happen? Because, I mean, I'm fascinated by marketing campaigns, and this, obviously I cover SAP. How does this kind of happen in 30 seconds or less? How does something really like this happen?
Well, so the funny thing is, you can't say you're going to have a customer-centric campaign and don't start with your customers. So it basically started with customers like ASUG customers. We tested some things online and saying, these are the messages we normally put out. How do they resonate with you? And people would say, these are all good, but that's not my fundamental problem. My fundamental problem is I never get to what it is that you want to do. Why not? Well, here are all the things that get in the way. As we started examining the list of things that got in the way, the common factor was complexity. What's the antidote to complexity? Being simple.
I think it's great. I think customers would appreciate hearing that you guys just didn't come up with this in a room throwing spitballs at the wall, or you know, going to New York and meeting with all. There was some customer-centric thought around this.
And there's a little bit of that always, because when people give you an idea, right? Nobody goes to Apple and says, I want a new iPhone that looks like this. But if you don't listen more carefully, you know, there's an old adage that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So companies should spend twice as much time listening and half as much time talking. I don't know, in the past maybe we did as much of that as well. But that's part of the new mantra. Listen more.
It's great to hear. Pun intended. So
that was a good one.
Jonathan, events. We're at an event here. SAP is well known for events. You guys take great pride in events.
We do.
What is the go-forward strategy for events? I mean, there seems to be a lot. You could go to an SAP event every week, it seems like. Will Run Simple...
Actually, to be fair, I'm going to interrupt you, and I apologize for that.
No, it's all right.
I think there are roughly 2,000 SAP events around the world. So 365 days, you could actually go to more than one a day if you wanted.
So will the Run Simple mantra go down to events? Will be some streamlining?
It is. We do need to dramatically simplify events. We're probably over-evented. The general idea is there's one mega event a year. That's Sapphire Now, held in Orlando. That's becoming much more of an international event, not just a North American event. There are a number of series of local events or more regional events under the brand SAP Select, which are primarily what I would call business functions events, where we target line of business, the head of HR, the head of marketing, the head of sales, the head of procurement. There are now more industry-oriented events that are more birds of feathers. Retailers get together, financial services get together, and they're more technologically oriented event like Tech Ed and Decode as well.
Yeah.
That's the general strategy, what we're trying to do.
That's great. Great to hear, because I know people, like especially ASOG members, like to plan out their years. So any clarification and simple strategy for there is much appreciated.
You know, one of the hardest thing to do is actually get all the events on one calendar. And one of the simplification things that we're doing internally, which I'm not there yet, is to be able to publish a calendar well in advance of every event that's going to happen around the year. I'm not quite there yet, but we're almost there.
Well, I'd be in favor of seeing that. Jonathan, thank you very much for coming in. We appreciate it. Nice to talk with you.
It's my pleasure. Run simple.
Run Simple. For more stories about customers running simple, please go to asognews.com.